Hey, what's going on out there, YouTube family? This is Sammy Leggett here representing Team JVS. I am back here again to give you guys a review. This is a movie review for a Netflix feature that's coming out called Ride or Die. Now, I did not know until after I've watched the movie a second time that this is based on a manga series called Gunjo. I'll briefly kind of go over that. I don't know if I actually want to do that because it would kind of spoil things. But yeah, I'll just keep that in mind. Now, this film starts off the gate very weird because you got like a person that's a surgeon, it's a doctor effectively. You know, she gets a phone call from what seems presumed to be a close friend. Her and her girlfriend are kind of like, you know, just having a nice day, and all of a sudden she gets this call and she's rushed to this friend and finds out something's wrong. And then she tries to help her friend. Now, this is where tragedy befalls it. And from that point, she is stuck with this friend for the remainder of the entire film, no matter what. But what did I think about it? I think that from an artistic standpoint, like some of the shots that they got, some of the handout shots, some of the chosen moments that they'd use. There's a scene where one of the main characters is in a car, and the car goes one way down a freeway. The other character is kind of walking up slowly to the other one, but the camera stays there for a long extended amount of time just so you could be able to see them kind of meet and interchange. And there's a lot of expressive shots like that. There's another scene, very violent and very gory scene, that they just stay there with it. In addition to that, this film actually is it's very dark. It's depressive, it's very dark, and it is very in your face when it comes to a lot of the sexual acts and a lot of the themes. There's a lot of nudity, open sexual relations that are going on between men and women. So again, I let you know this is beyond radar. This is probably what would be the rating, like MA. So just be cognizant of that. But this is going to be a very hard review to do because you got Ray, who's this character right here, who's what I was talking about was a surgeon. And then you got Nanio, who's married, and you don't know anything about them. And then you find out through the process of the film, through different flashbacks, who they really are. Whether it's like one of the characters kind of was like having this moment, you know, a dream about what they were like as friends in high school, you know, or circumstances when they go to like one of their houses and they just look at a picture and they're brought back to this repressed memory that neither one of them wanted to kind of go through, but they have to. The weird thing about this is that both characters are mentally unstable. I don't know what is really going on with them throughout the entire film up until the very end. And I would recommend, if you're going to watch this, don't listen to it in English. Make sure you listen to it in Japanese with English subtitles. I think it'll come a lot clearer because the second time I watched it, like I watched it without the English dub, and it was a lot more done loosely, especially with the subtitles and the imagery, to understand kind of the headspace of the girls. But again, the character Ray effectively does something very messed up very early on. And the whole entire film, I'm just like, is this character crazy? Is she a serial killer? And you don't understand the depths of why she's doing what she's doing. Matter of fact, the groundwork of this is all centered around the title, Ride or Die. What does that mean? What does devotion mean? What does obsession mean? What is the transition between obsession to love mean? And that is this movie in spades, whether it is them needing to feel something for each other, or get something from each other, or use other people. You get a clear understanding by the end of the film where that is, what they are to each other. But I will say this effectively, watching the second time, I like the film a lot more. The first time I watched it, the problem with it is so disjointed. It is non-linear. Like it goes from this scene to this scene to this scene, and it allowed you to take with these puzzle pieces and mash them together. if this was in a serial format, like if it was a series or a mini series or like a manga where it started from them in high school and it ended there, or it started at this moment where you're like, oh my gosh, what's about to happen, to then picking up right from where they're in high school, I think it would have flowed a lot better. I would have edited this completely different if it was actually me. And I feel like it would have been way more digestible, personally, because I was just taken out of it because I didn't know the impression that these characters were trying to give me. It wasn't until maybe the second act that I was like, oh, okay, I didn't catch that. And even watching the second time, I was like, oh, I didn't even notice that. Because there's a moment where the both characters, they're in bed together and they're kind of like having this moment and they're kind of gazing upon each other, and you're just like, what's going on? Again, the character Nadia, this is the character right here. she's an enigma. I don't know anything about her. I don't know too much about her other than the circumstance she's putting the character Ray in, or they're putting each other in one way or another, vice versa. And at the same time, I'm wondering most of the time who is really good and who is really bad for each other in this one, because there's different parallels that can say that they both are not good for each other in any way, shape, or form. But then there are moments where you're like, oh, they absolutely need each other. And it's deeper than just, a friendship. It's deeper than just even a love or a lover relationship. There's some other deep-seated things that are going on and themes that are going on that will surprise you effectively in this film, because I was just like, by the second time I watched, I was like, oh, that is what's wrong. That is the issue. That's what's going on with them mentally and emotionally. And you don't get it until the very end, right? And I think that if I would have known an impression of that, or got that, if it was actually played out linearly through different moments and segments, I think it would have left a better impression on me the first time watching. Because if I hadn't watched it the second time, I can tell you effectively, I would have left this at a 5 out of 10, or maybe a 4 out of 10. I'm going to rest this at a 7 out of 10. I think that there's a really good story here. There's a lot of groundwork being done. And it's not just from a story standpoint. These actresses are going for it. Both of them are, but I specifically think that the actress that plays the role of Ray, she is just wow. I don't know what to say. Like, some things that she does and the verbiage that she used and just how irate they both are, you just don't know where things are gonna go. Especially when you start really understanding what the dialogue and the verbiage is, because I'm like, this is going to lead down a very dark path. And I don't think they're ready for it. But then you realize, no, they're both ready for it. It's just, does it need to go down this path, right? And I think that that's the interesting journey and excursion of this film that makes it worth the watch. And I think it definitely pulls out some really good artistry. I do think that some of the camera angles that they decide to use, where some were really like inventive and they took those deep panned out shots and allowed time to breathe. Some moments where it's just kind of like they were shorthanding it, like they were actually holding it, and like somebody was actually just holding it freehanded. Some of those don't work. Some of those don't work at all. And I was going to detract a lot more from that if it's weird because some of those free-handed shots take away from the film. But then some of the other shots that they really make very inventive, I was kind of like, oh, wow, that was a really good shot. The other thing about this is that any form of violence or sensual things that happens, or like emotionally distressed moments where normally you kind of like you pan to one character or the other, like, no, they're like, we're going to zoom out and we're just going to let you just take it all in, for good or bad. There's a scene in a car that was one of the most uncomfortable things. I was like, I don't want to see this, bro. Like, this is just terrible. But then you got like an intimate scene that takes place in a bathtub that's surrounded by violence, but it's probably one of the sweetest and most in-depth story-driven parts of the film. And like they allow it to breathe. And that's why I appreciate this from an artist standpoint. But I think that this is not going to hit well with a lot of different people. For me, it worked. I rested at a 7 out of 10. But some people are going to be like, what was the point of this? Like, why do we have to go through this excursion? I think it would have been easily digestible if it would just been edited completely differently than the way it was. And I think from it not being, it was non-linear, people couldn't effectively, I don't think people would be able to harpen with it in a way that I've been very well received. But I think that from the acting and some of the shots that work, I think it would have left an impression. Now, I do think that the soundtrack and the score weren't as impressionable as I was hoping for. Some moments really hit. The opening and the beginning nearly were perfect. From the opening all the way until a bedroom sequence, I think were probably, shower sequence or bath sequence were almost perfect, straight up. But it was the going back and forth between using exposition to flashback, and it's just kind of like these puzzle pieces all over here. And I'm kind of like, I'm really curious to read Gunjo. I'm really curious to actually read this manga, because I feel like maybe that would have given me the story and the understanding that I needed. Because again, this movie deals with a lot, bro. Like domestic abuse, so many different things, man. And I don't know. I feel like I would have actually appreciated a lot more if it would have just gone from point A to point B in certain aspects of this film. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this review. Definitely go and let me know what you think of the movie Ride or Die. And we'll talk to you a little bit later on. All right. Take care, guys.